forum here for some Q&A potentially at for some Q&As potentially afterwards. Just know that you'll be recorded. So anyhow, we'll start with a little bit of housekeeping as we did last week. Please email Nicole Healy. The address is up on your screen. If you can't see a screen, if you're on the phone with us, it's nhealy, NHEALY at carecentralvna.org. And in the subject line, just put in emergency preparedness. And that way Nicole can keep track of who's attending and give you credit for it. We're gonna just jump right in. So this is, if you haven't noticed already, this is June, and June has a couple of firsts. You know, the summer solstice was just this past Sunday, the longest daytime of the year. So as of yesterday, our days have started to get shorter. I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news. It's also Father's Day on Sunday, so happy Father's Day belated to those on the call. June is also the full moon coming up on Thursday. So if you start seeing some unusual things, you know, you can blame it on the full moon. It's the strawberry moon, they call it. But June also brings about the start of the Atlantic hurricane season. And guess what? We are in the Atlantic region. So hurricane season is upon us officially. It lasts until end of November. And that is a great time for us to chat about emergency preparedness. One of the things that is difficult to talk about emergency preparedness is when you have a really beautiful, gorgeous day outside, you know, nice and calm. So who cares about emergencies, right? So it's a little bit easier to talk about emergency preparedness right before a huge snowstorm, a huge nor'easter, or a hurricane. But here we are in the throngs of a gorgeous day, nothing going on. So when you look at this slide here, for those you can see, there's four aspects to this slide. It starts with mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So right now you can think of where we are at in this time frame as far as preparedness. So we're taking actions prior to an emergency to facilitate our responses if an emergency does hit. Okay, so that when it comes time for our response, this section here, we are prepared and we can quickly recover and you know, proceed, hopefully have as little damage as possible with our continuity of care. That's really what we're trying to prepare for, is such that we can continue to provide care to our patients so that does not become interrupted in any way, shape, or form. So it's that continuity that we're after. We are in the preparedness phase, right? So we're just in a phase that is, everything is quiet. We have time and resources to prepare so that when it comes time for us to respond to an emergency, we'll be able to quickly get in on it. Think about these preparedness requirements as focusing on three necessary things. So number one is safeguarding our human resources. That includes, of course, all of us, includes our patients. Number two is maintaining that business continuity that we talked about and protecting our physical resources. So all of these little things that we put in place is to try to affect these three key items. We had, and when I say we, there were over 50 healthcare related facilities that came under one roof back in 2019. So that's a couple of years ago. And we had a few days worth of sessions where we went through hazard preparedness and emergency preparedness. We had hospitals under that roof. We had nursing homes represented there. We had home care agencies. I know that at the time GVNA was represented, and at the time Southern Worcester County was represented as well. And without us even knowing that one day we would be one. And the finding was that in the central Massachusetts area, and there is MEMA, the medical emergency of Massachusetts, is divided in several sections or regions. In our region, in the central Massachusetts region, These items here that you see on the right of this slide, utility failure, natural disaster, cyber attack, bio outbreak, and active shooter, those are the top 5 hazard vulnerabilities that we came to find back in 2019. I would venture to say that if we had the same meeting today with the same players, we would probably have something related to a pandemic listed as a vulnerability. You know, we've just come through 1 full year plus of an emergency, if you would, that we lived through, we worked through, we fought through. So kudos to everyone here on this call. This same branch of MEMA, this region 2, was also instrumental in helping us access PPE back in those first few months of the pandemic. That supplies were really short, and they did a fantastic job making sure that all of the healthcare facilities in the area were able to share some of their supplies while things were getting built up. So just to give you a background, that is something that we participate in as an agency. We are at the table there. From an internal, from just our agency perspective, when we talk about hazard vulnerabilities, think of things like illnesses, staffing levels. Again, keep in the back of your mind, continuity. What would affect continuity for us? Certainly weather. I mean, again, it's hard to talk about weather when we have a beautiful day outside. It would be a little easier on a snowy or pre-hurricane day. I don't know if any of you, I think I asked this a little bit earlier, and just by knowing that we have 88 people on the call right now, I think we all made it in. But I know that some of us have come to work some days and tried to log in and couldn't for some reason, or had difficulties. That, and I'll put these in air quotes, right? So that becomes an emergency for us. And I do want to give a special shout out to the likes of Kyle and Kelly and Nicole and Liz. You think these 4 folks really keep us going. If our internal systems, if our EMR, if our electronics were to shut down, it becomes a big deal. For that purpose, we have what we call redundant systems, right? So there's many layers of redundancy that are built into place within our system to make sure that if something goes wrong in one level, there's another level or safety nets. And I'm going to use the term nets in plural because, again, that redundancy is part of emergency preparedness. Our next slide here talks about, and I purposely put this in, and I'm purposely wearing my name badge here. Let me just put this a little bit smaller. A couple of things on this slide that I want to point out. Number one, we have a very comprehensive emergency disaster preparedness plan and policy. I really encourage each one of you to make sure you can access that policy. Again, if you're going to Kronos, my company, documents, and just type in the word emergency, if you can't get access to it, if you don't know how to, please ask me, please ask your supervisor, know how to get to your policies. That is supremely important. I really encourage you with that. The other thing is our badges, right? So right in the back of our badges, if you've looked recently, there are 3 bullet points or 3 items that will help guiding in an emergency, okay? Look at that, become familiar with that, know that that is there. Speaking of ID badges, if ever we are in a time where there is a potential disaster or potential emergency that's anticipated, let's say a hurricane or even a nor'easter, make sure to take your badges with you. Have your badges out at all times. When you are traveling and a police officer, let's say, stops you to make sure that you're not supposed to be on the road, if you have your badge with you, it will allow you to move around because we are essential personnel, if you would. Also, and I had to put this in, you know that we are in the window for our DPH inspection, if you would. So whenever DPH walks through the door, we all want to make sure that we have our badges on. The other thing I have on here is a notification tree, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. This slide you may all be familiar with. For those who are visiting staff, in our admission packets, every single patient is given this checklist, and we educate our patients to this. We educate our family and caregivers. And there's a reason that we do this is because if our patients, if our caregivers, if we ourselves have these emergency supplies ready to go, in the case of an emergency, we don't clog up the system. We don't cause a bottleneck ourselves by having to run to the store or by having to, ask for help, if you would. Because we already have some of these items in place. So I really would encourage you to take a peek at this list. If you don't like the specific list, you can just go on the internet these days and put in emergency preparedness kit, and boy, get ready for days look of scrolling and viewing. Even if you go on Amazon, they sell these ready-made things if that's your choice. But know that there are some key items that you should have in place, have prepared, and of course, educate your patients to the same. A couple of things that we have been involved with here as an agency. I just want to make sure everyone knows that these things are in place. On a monthly basis, there are reports that are shared with leadership that, on a weekly basis, these reports are shared with leadership where we have our patients' acuities outlined. If you are a clinician, make sure that your patient's acuity is accurate. I know that changes throughout the episode. On a monthly basis, Kronos prints out for us, for leadership, a list of all the staff and contact so that we can reach you in the case of an emergency. We also use that to initiate the call tree. Sometimes we have these unannounced drills. I'm not saying that one was coming up. I'm just saying sometimes we have those. And that ensures that we can access you and you can access us. Again, that list is only as good as how updated you keep it. So if you've had a change in phone, if you've had a change in address or any contact information, please go into Kronos, please update that. That is very, very important, and even more important when an emergency strikes. Lastly, if we do have a call tree list communication drill, if you would, make sure that you try to communicate back to your supervisor as soon as possible. That is part of the drill, is to see how many people we can access in an X amount of time. And sometimes we do a repeat drill to see if we can shorten that time if it's too long the first time around. So just know that those things are in place. Some of you have access to this or have seen this slide. It's called the silent call procedure. Certainly something to be aware of. When we share these slides, Wednesday afternoon, you'll have access to this. You can print this out as well. Next to the last thing here are emergency supply kits. We have a few kits located in strategic places in our buildings. Just in case in an emergency, we come to our buildings and there's no power, we can quickly go into specific places and access these supply kits. The contents are listed here. We have the emergency policy, we have gloves, masks, apron, we have flashlight, batteries, and the crank radio. Again, just in case we have to access anything in our buildings that don't have that power. I am going to just again point to this resources page. I'm not going to spend time with it. You'll have access to this as well. I encourage you to click on these hyperlinks when you get this file. Just become aware that these files are there for you. in case of an emergency. Also notify your patients of signing up for the reverse 911 or the code red that is available at each town. With that said, again, I just want to remind everyone to please send an email to Nicole and Healy at carecentral.org with the emergency preparedness on the subject line. I did include, again, in these slides, when you get to a detailed list of the COPs, the conditions of participated patient, for those of you who enjoy reading those types of things. It is 11:16 on my clock. I thank you so much for your patience. I'm going to unmute us all now. Let's see if that worked. Yeah, it looks, well, I don't know if you're unmuted. If you have any questions, any ideas, anything, please don't hesitate to share. You can email them to me or to your supervisors. It'll get to me eventually. If there's anything that we didn't cover that you wish we had covered, please let me know. Feedback is always super important. With that said, I am all ears, and if there's no questions, I'll let you all get to your busy days.
Ricardo, it's Betsy. Can you hear me?
I sure can, Betsy. Good morning.
Good morning to everybody. I just had a quick question. Where do we find the call tree, the latest call tree?
Good question. I will get that back to you all. We should know that. I should know that off the top of my head. I just don't know right now, but I will get that answer to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No. All right, everyone. I really appreciate your efforts of being here. We had a total of 88 of us at one point, I believe. So thank you so much. It's wonderful to see you. You guys look great on my screen here. Have a wonderful day.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye. Thank you.